You know, there is one area of the Neo TTRPG system, my gaming engine, that I really focused on making sure that I could put in the complexity I think people want while maintaining smooth, fast gameplay, and that's the area of combat. You know, I have some tables in there, like, your feet can take damage, your legs, all this detailed stuff. But it's really simple. Once you know what's damaged, you know the chart, it's a simple roll. It's a quick playthrough, right? But it's complexity simplistically put in. But the purpose with that is to make sure it doesn't bog you down with a bunch of rolls. And things like injuries and that don't just happen all the time. So when they do happen, you get a quick way, smooth way to deal with them that accepts the reality of what's going on, brings that into it, brings in that complexity, but again, does not bog the game down with a bunch of dice rolls, killing the pace of the combat in the process. Now, let me explain how I run the D100 system that I use. It's pretty simple. There's a limit on the plus, and on the target number, there's a limit, right? So there's a limitation. There's not a never-ending bonus, and even if you exceed the bonus, you don't get the, what exceeds, right? So there's a limitation. Now, the majority of the Neo TTRPG system is simply that D100 dice roll versus a target number. That is the majority of the game. And again, the aim with simplicity in the dice system, the reason I only use D10s and D6s, is for smooth, fast gameplay. It's not to dismiss the complexity of the dice and our hobby. It's just I had a different approach. I focus on gameplay and the experience. So I cut it down to 2 dice because in reality that's all I needed to achieve what I wanted. I adjusted it, got it down to that, and then what I did was I knew I needed some individual rolls for duration, damage, stuff like this. And I needed something that wasn't just D10. I needed to lower that so I could have different levels of things. And the way I found that was, okay, the lesser damage would be the D6, and I can go along just using that. If something didn't do much, compared to something else, it's easy to measure that out by saying there's a D6 instead of a D10. The hit points you may get back in a situation, right? So that's how I measured it out, having one dice that's representing better damage, another dice that will represent lower damage, and then you can work out bonuses and minuses all into that and get the complexity that you would get if you used all the dice, right? So it's me using 2 dice to get a bunch of complexity, but it's simplistic in gameplay. Once you know everything is D100 versus target, you're good. I mean, that's the majority of the game. And where there is D6s, or where you're using a D10 outside of rolling D1. When I say D10s and D6s are all you need, let me be clear. You can use 2D10 if you're new to act as a D100, right? So that's what I mean. And most people might not have a D100, just have to have 2D10. They act like a D100 for you. Pretty simple, and it explains it in the game if you're not sure how that works. So all that's clarified. So it's a D100 versus target number game. And that's intent and design. See, it's not all the individual pieces that I'm saying are unique. Though, the ways I use some of the individual pieces that have been used by all kinds of innovators over time, it's again, the innovation is, I'm not taking their mechanic. I'm taking the idea, but there's only so many ideas. Like the idea of ability scores. You can call them something else, but pretty much the stats of a character, right? I mean, it's not like, they figured out the biggest secret in the world and it's a genius thing. It's pretty simple and straightforward. So to use something in the vein called ability scores in your game doesn't mean you're copying their system. It's when you copy the dice and the mechanics and how it functions that you're really copying. If the outcome of your system, your ability scores are just vastly different, use different dice, have a different approach, that's different enough to not be a clone. The clone is when you're just simply copying and pasting. There, that clears that up. The skill system has skills you can choose. Like I said, I did a recent video about skills, how they're like an information dump. But there is an entire unskilled mechanic. So if you're wondering how would you do something you're not skilled at, don't worry. The game, let alone it's not going to get in your way. It acknowledges that that's going to be the case, and actually I played to the realistic side of that by giving you a mechanic, a system for doing things that you're unskilled at. Like, but it's like, you know, you should be able to do some basic things. Like, as long as you're not riding the horse like a champion, but you're just riding the horse down a road, you don't need a skill for that exactly, right? So we're cool. The magic system is pretty straightforward. It's like, look, there's an overall limitation. So there is a limit to how much magic you can use to a degree, which for many people, I think they would be happy with that. So pretty much the same thing with psionics. There's just limitations properly built in, but each spell, each magical ability, each psionic power are just unique in their own right. I mean, there's some idea of how spells and that are meant to work, but when you get to that system, each spell or psionic power is unique from one another to the point they work different, right? They're just so different that, you know, if I say this is how spells work, that's really no good to you. What you want to do is go check it out and just see how each individual spell works on its own, because each one will have its own rules. Same thing with magical abilities, same thing with psionic powers. Okay, so when you get to the leveling system, you'll get to this area called Boost Area. Now, I don't have a thing called feats in my game, but I know people want certain bonuses and benefits. I get that from the customer base. Okay, so how do I approach what you want, give you what you want without breaking the game? Because in my honest opinion, feats are just random bonuses, and you never know which one is going to break your system. Like, that bonus breaks this, so you got to adjust, right? I don't really want the game to be that fragile that you're breaking it so easily all the time. So how do I give you bonuses and benefits without giving you something in the vein of random feat bonuses, right? How do I do that? So that is my aim with getting bonuses into the game that you're going to be happy with, that don't break the game. That's the point of it. I've done the science on the numbers and that, so I make sure all these bonuses don't snap the game in half. Right? That's really my aim. I just want you to have a structured, smooth game that isn't snapping all the time because there's careless ideas added to the game. Feats are careless in the sense that you can lose control of it really easily, and you never know what piece you're going to put in that just doesn't work with everything else, right? It can become a mess, and I don't want that complicated shit in. But again, I know how most of you work, and I'm like, okay, maybe we can meet in the middle where I can guarantee something for you without the breaking of the game. And that means you get a good experience without it being fragile. And at least you're guaranteed the bonuses and you can be happy with them without worried about if that bonus is hurting the game. If you're going to get a complaint, oh, now your character's to this. Don't worry. You know, and that's another thing with combat. It's not Dungeons and Dragons. So the idea is combat is meant to be a little messy and random, smooth, quick, and fast. But the idea is it's mostly not large combat. It's not like large-scale combat like D&D. But, I mean, it is intense, and it's meant to be pretty intense. And it can be some hard fighting. You might be like, oh, I made a superhero. Just understand the numbers and the focus on violence in combat is just different. It's not... See, this is where I say I don't do a clone. It's my own game, so it's my own take on combat. Is the combat, achievable? And oh yeah, no, not a problem. Leveling up in the whole 9 yards, right? But can it be a little insane and crazy and out there? Well, it's meant to. That's by design. That is honestly by design, and it's meant to be fun. It's meant to take you to an edge where once you understand the numbers, because I did it for 15 years, so I really got this stuff down. It's like you can get to the edge of a lot of fights and still just win. Right? So some fights can take you right to an edge. And it doesn't mean... I believe in quick, smooth combat, but it doesn't mean some combat can't last for a little bit. But it will be more focused where it's more engaging and quick on turn, so players don't have all this time to just look away, right? It should, like, if it took an hour... The difference between my fight and the Neo TTRPG system and the D&D system is it's going to be engaging for the hour, right? It's going to be intense and engaging for that hour. And I hope that's a huge difference between my combat in D&D is that engagement level that you're guaranteed to get from my combat that you don't get from the other game, right? And again, I understand that combat's very important to the majority of our customer base, and they make that clear. Even if there's a strong fringe that speaks very loudly, the majority of people in the hobby like combat. They really do. So I understood combat had to be a very important focus, and there's certain elements I understand. It's not just that it's D&D, but it's D&D picked up on it, and you can see other innovators understanding that, which I respect. So you can see truly full made-on games with many elements that D&D came to first. Because it's not hard if you're one of the only groups of people, pretty much a think tank, doing that at the time. You're going to race everyone to the most common sense things you could imagine. I think many of the things that D&D got to first, or the people that were making that, would have been easily got to by other people, but just, you're there first. So fair enough, you get the claim fame, right? But it gets to a point where there's such base ideas that came with it, that for you to do something similar to them, like on that base idea, you can't get away from some things. Especially if you want to go down the road of this kind of combat. Because I noticed in other games where if they get away from this stuff, the problem is there are certain elements they get away from that make the combat a little bit more flaky or less meaningful or less important. And I get that's good for the fringe players, but the reason that remains a fringe game, I would tell them, the reason your game is unsuccessful and doesn't get that much support or might not have that many additions coming out is simply this. Your system fails in the area of combat, and that keeps the majority away. Now, if you see a game that's okay at combat, like Star Wars and that, you'll see some odd games that are outside of D&D make a lot of money. It's because there are certain elements you can't get away from. But if you do them, if you go to them, people will love it. Like if they feel combat's important in your game, that game will be automatically more successful. And Star Wars is definitely a game that's going to make you feel like the combat is just a bit more important, a bit more of a attention given to it, like D&D, than other gaming systems, right? That's why I find many of the additions and different ideas for Star Wars all had to focus on the swordplay and combat. And because of that, it benefited them in popularity and sales. I would hope people would notice that. That's the customer base, again, repeating to all of us, especially people that want to make games, what they're into, right? They're into Monster of the Week. You can downgrade it, but you're part of the minority. The majority like it. And you go, oh, that's stupid. They don't give a shit what you think. They like it because they see this as a game. Why should it be all this other fucking drama class shit, right? And I get that. I actually think they're not wrong. Right? It is just a game. It's okay to be into the cool Monster of the Week thing. It's cool. Nothing wrong with it if you like the game. It's not stupid if you actually enjoy the process. And we can't enjoy always repeating some things? Like, look, I think you should always want to be creative and try different things. But there are certain processes that, even if you take away for a while, you should bring back. And I think the reason the customer base does like a repeat process is almost like watching Power Rangers, right? When I was young, and like many people watch Power Rangers, and you think, okay, they do the same thing, right? Same fight, same monster gimmick, but it works, and everyone stayed around for it, and it's not something that gets old. I remember wrestling when I was young, same Stone Cold Stunner, same actions, never get old. If it's good, it's good. We can hang on to shit for a long time. And I think even Hollywood gets surprised by that, or people in the entertainment world, like a wrestler will change his music, and he thinks, I just got tired, I needed something new. But really, the new thing is not hitting, and the fans were not tired of the old thing. It's just a complete bad read. It's just whatever's going to make you fresh is not the change of a fucking theme song. It's a change in attitude. It's a change of... The thing that's hurting you in most cases is not what you think. Right? Because the audience can hold on to things for a long time. As we know in the tabletop role-playing game hobby, there are some people that play it raw, rules as written, and they played it that way, the same edition, for 50 fucking years. So let's be real when we know people like Monster of the Week, and that is the vast majority of people in the hobby. So it's something I really took into consideration, where I said to myself, how do I get complexity? How do I get deeper role player or people to care about. How do I do all that while still getting all this other stuff? So you'll notice I have a whole area of socializing. Rules, how it works, how it goes. I make that as important as the combat. So there's a socializing section of the game, has all, pretty much walks you through the entire thing. So there's attention given. There's like D&D was saving throws. I have a thing called resist dice rolls. It's similar, but again, it's a different mechanical system. So outside of the similar frame, it's just matched up to a different rule set, so it completely functions different under that process, right? So it is similar to saving throws, but it's, again, slightly different. In many ways, actually not slightly, a lot different, because it's working with a different mechanical system. Then we get to death in the game. Death is, well, how can I say? I check every box. So every area where you could choke to death or you could starve to death, where some games won't even touch these zones, I do. I cover every possible way you could die. There's a system for everything, right? I mean, really, I cover that. Again, back to the combat after that, because combat is really, like I said, smooth. But then you get to some other forms of combat that I do, which is naval combat, siege warfare, and overall war simulation. Yes, I have rules. If you want to have a sea battle with Navy ships and whatnot, or pirates, yeah, I have a whole rule set for how that works. If you want to do siege, like siege the walls of a town or something like that, like blow them up with catapults, everything, every rule for that is all covered, in all the machines, right? Then what about a basic, just overall, say the larger combat war, right? Yeah, I have a whole system for simulating war between two armies and how that works. And it all works. These are good systems that work. Then, I have a shitload of monsters for the game and the setting. And again, I don't separate the book, so it's all everything in one. But on top of having a shitload of monsters, I have stats for basic animals. But I also have a creation area for encounters. But it also teaches you how to make your own monsters. How to make your own anything. And how to pretty much, you got a set of stats. So if you wanted to bring some human character in, you didn't want to look up the stats, I have a creation area for encounters. In that area, it just has whole stat blocks for you already ready to go. And you could just copy, paste it into the human. There you go. You got human stats. So I hope that's really helpful, those little things, because I've done a bunch of them for different sizes. So every kind of NPC or monster you could think up in your head where you're like, well, how would I change the stats for that? Well, just compare the size, go to the size, and you can adjust the stats, of course. But these are boxes already set for you for copy and paste. Quick in just making your own shit and throwing it in, because I'm all about being creative and bringing your own ideas in. So I wanted to make sure that works. And then you get to another area like crafting. There's a lot of crafting, and I cover crafting rules for everything, even up to magic, making spells, making magical items. They're not hard to do in game as a player with your character. So I hope that's a lot of fun. There's a whole system to that. And then even how just magic items in general works. If the game master is wondering how they can put together their own magic items, you go to the section where it's all about magic items, and it's going to explain to you exactly how you, the game master, can just make whatever the fuck you want. And then there are so many magic items for examples, or you can just use them, that are endless, right? So, I mean, it's just, if you don't see an object that's a magic item in that list, you can just borrow one of the sets of powers from one of the other items, and bam! And then make some changes, adjust, make your own thing, whatever you want to do. But it teaches everything. It even teaches how just to make your own item without stealing stats or rules from other items, right? Just make your own off the top of your head, but it gives you the system to do that, the guidelines. At the start of the game, at the start of the book, I introduce, especially new people, just to sort of run you through what role-playing is, game mastering, setting up your own adventures. I'm not someone who's going to do a module or a pre-made adventure in that way for you. I made a game, right? What I do is I teach you everything you need to know. And then right after the opening write-up, you go into the mechanics. It's going to run you down the target system and everything and give you the rundown. I want you to know that right away before you get on to character creation. Because some people will say, well, where do you start? And I'm like, well, I don't want to give you all the rules right away because I want to get to character creation quite quick. But I do open up with the opening introduction to what this is. Then go over the basic mechanics. the basic setting. I get like a one-page, pitch for the setting before we get to the setting much later in the book. And then there is even the gate key thing, which is for a Skullhorn, there's this gate key thing that has to do with your characters. It will be something important that you need to know before you dive into character creation. That's why it's just before character creation. Then you're in character creation, and we go through all the shit I told you about. And there's a giant, massive list of equipment. There's tons of weapons. There's guns, pistol, shotgun, rifle. Those are the 3 base guns for the game. They're in there, and they work sweet. You'll love that, right? You'll love everything. And the game is medieval fantasy, but it's like on the edge of some industrial push forward. And why? Because unlike the real world, we're talking about a fantasy. So like a fantasy as in, like, you know what I mean? Like it's the magic itself pushes that world ahead in a different way. And you got all kinds of different beings that can discover things, super intelligence. So you can imagine, unlike the real world, you might see certain processes go fast. And magic itself, I mean, I think a lot of people forget to think how powerful it is. That over magic, wars can start. You can try to control the world. But imagine looking at magic almost like even like oil, like it's a moneymaker, right? And when you get a big world like Skullhorn, you can see how that could happen. And so you get areas where there is a form of coal that has been discovered, where you can see a train. Trains aren't everywhere. You could see a steamship. You could do all that, but they're not everywhere. But they do exist. Guns aren't everywhere, but they do exist, right? Even because of how big the world is, some people can be so closed off that they've never encountered magic. All right, and I talked about in a recent live stream all the new content that I've got, the 4 weeks so far of new content for Skullhorn. And I updated the entire core PDF. So the early reviews of the awful look of the old PDF is gone. It's updated, it looks pretty. It's a great game. I know you'll love it. Yeah, and I mean, it explains to you what you need to know, but doesn't over-explain things. You'll know. You read through that, you'll know what to do as you finally pick that stuff out and put the charts up and you go to test this stuff out. You'll see that the test works because I've already done the test, right? So no worries, you'll get into it. And once you click with this stuff in like 1 or 2 sessions, you'll know it forever. And the great thing about the Neo TTRPG system is I use it for all the different editions. So once you know how to play Skullhorn, you'll know how to play Invasion. And then you can go buy Invasion. And that is a fun game with a lot more guns and modern. No magic, but trust me. Oh shit, there's some awesome stuff in that. There is some awesome stuff in that. There's grenades in there. But I love each upgrade because it causes me to have to come up with rules for so many more things that I wanted to. And I admit the Skullhorn thing, when I went to put guns in there, I wanted to do that for Skullhorn, but I knew they would be the basis for all the guns that would follow. And that's exactly what they've been. Once I experimented with them and got them to work in Skullhorn, I knew I could just advance that to more advanced gunplay for the modern guns, right? Again, what I learned from the modern game is stuff I'm going to take to the space game as well. And I'll learn a bunch, as I am right now, about the space game and spaceship combat. And what I decided to do was sort of look somewhat at space combat like at sea. Right? Like the naval thing. I sort of taken the idea from Star Trek to Starfleet. They're sort of like Navy captains on Navy ships. And I was like, I like that concept. I don't want to lean into it like them because I don't want to do a copycat thing. But I could see how you could just naturally start sort of seeing it as you out on your ship and you're the captain, right? Anyway. Okay. I love you. At least most of you for now. Take care.